After 20 years, Dark Cloud's lost action figures have finally been found, in addition to other unreleased beta figures never before seen, all with a connection to the Legend of Dragoon. Dark Cloud's lost merchandise found and preserved by the Dark Cloud Compendium.
Hiddencastle's Dark Cloud Compendium.
Hey there, and welcome to the Dark Cloud Compendium. My name's Hiddencastle, and I'll be your guide. Today's episode focuses on a rare Dark Cloud lost media discovery over 20 years in the making. Dark Cloud's action figures, and our lost media treasure hunt to find them. To unravel the riddle of Dark Cloud's lost media action figures, we'll be discussing everything from Dark Cloud cut content, 2000s press events, and just how our lost media treasures were finally reunited with the Dark Cloud community. Hey, rescuing these statues from the paws of hoarders is all thanks to our amazing patrons over at patreon.com who help make this show possible. My focus with the Dark Cloud Compendium is to make all this rare, obscure, and lost media as accessible as possible without any paywalls. If you enjoy the show, consider checking out the Patreon pinned in the comments section down below. It really does help.
Help me!
With that being said, grab your Yu-Gi-Oh cards and climb aboard our Compendium time machine back to the early 2000s, back to Japan 2001's Jump Festa. The year is 2001. The feeling of excitement and optimism for the new millennium was at an all-time high, as the GameCube and Xbox were set to launch in Japan, marking the continuing dawn of the new console cycle. As Sega's Dreamcast was reaching its final sunset, Sony's Dark Clouds loomed over the horizon. Many fans and press alike gathered together at the Makuhari Messe Convention Center in Japan, the nexus for animation and entertainment alike, the one and only Jump Festa. This is the origin point of Dark Cloud's action figures, as it starts right here, this historic event. Sadly, due to this being a foreign convention and relatively obscure for the international markets, like most things related to Dark Cloud, actual photos of the booth went lost for over 2 decades. That is, until they were recently rediscovered on archive.org's Wayback Machine. Through using the Wayback Machine, the Dark Cloud community was able to rediscover these images. Although the images are few in number, it paints the image that Sony was going above and beyond to promote Dark Cloud, as the game had a major showing at the convention hall. I mean, who could miss this giant, life-size Dark Genie himself? Now, this photo in particular is special, as the man standing next to the Dark Genie is none other than Kentaro Motomura, Dark Cloud's producer who worked with Sony's historic Japanese studio and Level 5 alike. Check him out, he looks like such a proud parent. Now we have our giant Dark Genie statue, but what about our Dark Cloud action figures? What Dark Cloud action figures would you have wanted growing up? Personally speaking, I was always a fan of the Master Jackets. Sound off in the comments section down below, and let's get the conversation started. And if you're enjoying the video, hit that like button, it really does help this small channel grow.
昔泳いだ川、野球やった広場、いやいや通った塾、取り戻したい故郷がある。ダーククラウド、プレイステーション2から。僕んち。プレイステーション。
Before we get to our legendary Dark Cloud action figures, there's another curiosity I want to briefly talk about, and that's this rather interesting display of No Rune Village. The idea was that this display was modular, meaning that one could simply remove the houses and buildings and place elsewhere on the display to give a hands-on demonstration of the diorama game mechanic, which is a really cool way of adding hands-on audience involvement, as its legacy lives on, as it was later seen up close on the cover of Dark Cloud's Japanese soundtrack, along with this little handmade clay figure of Tone. As we depart this dynamic display of Norun Village and walk on ahead, we approach a showcase containing Dark Cloud action figures. A trio of characters populate the stand, from the skeletal Master Jacket to the villainous Dark Genie. And even that mischievous Ruby is here too. This blurry, singular photo from an obscure Japanese blog site from all those years ago is all that remains of evidence of these statues' existence. It made me wonder, were these action figures made for this event specifically? Or was there more action figures like Tone and the rest of the heroes too? So it seemed as if the window of opportunity was open for villains, heroes, and monsters alike. Jump Festa took place in 2001. Let's step forward in time to 2003. Years have gone by since the initial events, and my curiosity peaked. I must have been about 7 years old when playing Dark Cloud when it released. Much like many of you in the Dark Cloud community, it captured my imagination and never let go. Little did I know that I would stumble upon something truly special. It was the endless days of summer, and I would often spend those humid, rainy moments away from the busy play of the streets to the strange future sounds of dial-up internet and researching my favorite video games. And that's when it hit me. I remember Googling Dark Cloud toys or Dark Cloud action figures, and it led to me coming across a photo on Google Images of Tone and Seda posed together. It absolutely blew my mind. I had to have them, and I had no idea where to find these figures. And me being my young self, I lacked the foresight to save this image, but it was forever burned in my memory. And just like that, around 2006, that image disappeared from the internet. Unsure of what these figures may have been, the sight of them eluded me for a decade. I remember in the early days of the Dark Cloud community telling other community members about these statues, of seeing Tone and Seda posed together, but no luck. In hindsight, it all sounds really silly, but for me, it was my first brush with the world of lost media. It was an experience that served as one of my main inspirations behind the Dark Cloud Compendium and lost media preservation. Since those humid summer days, years have passed by like raindrops in the storm. The preservation of lost media is a preservation of our culture. Little did we all know it would take almost 2 decades for the echoes of the past, Tone and Seda's action figures to find their way back to the Dark Cloud community. With each passing day, month, and year, we'd come closer and closer to making that big discovery, to unraveling this lost mystery, and finally getting our answers. In 2023, the pieces started to come together when fellow Dark Cloud preservationist Kai found 2 advertisements from none other than BlueBox Toys' BBI brand at New York Toy Fair 2001, which revealed that they were indeed the creators of Dark Cloud statues. This was a big deal as it finally gave us a lead. It all became so clear as BlueBox Toys also made figures for other Sony properties such as The Legend of Dragoon and Omega Boost. It would make sense for them to have also gotten the rights to create statues for Dark Cloud, as they previously did business with Sony. This first ad in particular gave us a closer look at Tone and Seda, or should I say Tone and Sed, spelling mistakes aside, by using BlueBox Toys as our main lead for research, and utilizing the Wayback Machine's website for BlueBox Toys, we were able to rediscover another advertisement that was previously lost, giving us a closer look at how these rarities were presented. It seems that this would have represented the first set, and to our surprise, it even included this ferocious looking master jacket, which we never saw clearly up to this point. And with that, the floodgates were swung open. It didn't take long until we found magazine advertisements for sale on eBay of all places. This one is special as it detailed the creation of these statues, in addition to showing us prototype unpainted versions of Ruby and the Dark Genie, along with other characters that were previously unknown, like the mighty Minotaur Joe. To dig even deeper, Kai even rediscovered this listing over at EB Games, showing that the Tone, Seda, and Master Jacket statues represented the first set, or wave if you will. And get this, they were sold as an online exclusive. They were first priced at $49.99 in the summer, but were quickly discounted down to $19.99 a few months later, perhaps due to the lack of sales. And I mean, can you blame them? Seda went to said to being mistaken as Tone. Sadly, this was a negligence that was given to the Dark Cloud statue set. Perhaps it was doomed to fail from the very beginning. But this solves a key part of the mystery of why these statues fell into obscurity in the first place. They were never sold in stores to our knowledge, instead only offered online in the sepia tone days of the 2000s, where the internet was a rarity and not widely adopted. It's clear that these statues, being created for the niche statue collecting markets, with their limited advertising and online exclusivity, just failed to make the sales that BlueBox Toys and Sony were both hoping for. They were a financial failure. It's unknown if BlueBox Toys created the second wave of statues, as they have yet to be seen or found in the modern era. In the world of lost media, good things come when the community diligently searches. After 2 long decades of these statues disappearing like an opar from the ashes, they miraculously reappeared. A mysterious collector with connections to the gaming industry introduced themselves via the Dark Cloud community Discord, inquiring about these lost statues that they happened to come across. And there they were, the heroic duo of Tone and Seda. Seda standing tall and proud, albeit missing his sword, and Tone ready for adventure, but he left his arms at home, and he was missing his stand too. The owner expressed interest in putting these statues up for auction on eBay. I quickly explained the history of these statues, as well as the Dark Cloud Compendium preservation project, and the need to properly document these statues for the sake of preservation. There's many Dark Cloud fans from all around the world that would be interested in hearing the story of these lost media statues. And at that moment, it seemed as if we'd have a chance of reuniting them with the Dark Cloud community. The only issue was that the seller was asking for an amount just shy of being in the thousands. After some negotiating and problem solving alike, these statues were finally freed from the hands of opportunists and back with the Dark Cloud community where they belonged. It's all thanks to the amazing Dark Cloud community member and loyal compendium supporter, Story Lover, who helped me pay for these statues in the last minutes, and I couldn't think of a better person to split these figures with. After this video for documentation, Tone made his trip to his new home overseas in the United Kingdom, where Story Lover would take care of him, while Seda stayed here in Casa de Hiddencastle. When finding out who created the Dark Cloud figures, it allowed our group to do some investigative digging. We discovered that while BlueBox Toys handled the creation of video game figures and statues, they later shifted their focus to toddler and baby toys. Everything from fine motor, gross motor, and manipulatives, but not a single Dark Cloud figure could be found on their websites. Kai had the idea of making contact with BlueBox Toys via email and inquired if they had any information regarding our Dark Cloud figures. Unfortunately, BlueBox Toys responded and declined any questions, saying that they don't have any information about BlueBox Toys' involvement with Dark Cloud. This made me think, maybe, just maybe, the representative who responded to that email was from that new guard of BlueBox Toys, the one brought in when they rebranded themselves to focus on baby toys. If we could somehow reach out to someone who worked at BlueBox Toys during the 2000s, they may have the answers to our questions. Now, getting in contact with an employee like that is easier said than done, as they would have had to work in the 2000s and around the Dark Cloud line to have any recollection of it. However, I did find a solid lead, notably being BlueBox Toys photographer Jim Kaiser. Jim Kaiser was responsible for photographing the Dark Cloud set along with other BlueBox Toys. He may even have knowledge on where the unreleased figures of Ruby, the Dark Genie, and Minotaur Joe, notably where they went after the photography session. With our luck, they'd be stashed in a warehouse, just waiting to be found. Unfortunately, despite my efforts, I was unable to make any contact with this potential source of knowledge, and after waiting for some time and getting no response, I decided to pack it up and call it a day. With that, we were out of any solid leads for the time being. Looking at these print advertisements with a critical eye can reveal some well-hidden secrets, some well-hidden nuggets of information. The first being the packaging of these Dark Cloud figures. The online listing only shows our trio of characters, of figures out of their box. Well, it was typical for toy companies of that era to show their entire product line on the back of the box. We know this as BlueBox had done this before in the past, which means that perhaps if we had the packaging, we could have got a better look at the mysterious figures for Ruby, the Dark Genie, and Minotaur Joe. Unfortunately, we never truly got a good look at the packaging, but if one looks close enough, they can make out what seems to be the packaging of Seda and the Master Jackets. And now, where do we begin? It seems that the packaging once again featured the outdated Dark Cloud logo. The side profile of these boxes features a large, eye-catching image of the characters. Either the back or the opposite side of the packaging has information regarding the character, the game, and the features of articulation of these figures. Interestingly, when these figures were being advertised in the media, the writers would often use the early Japanese names, such as Majin for the Dark Genie, Ushi for Minotaur Joe, and Set or Seda with a Z, always getting Seda's name wrong. And the confusion regarding the names even spilled into the advertising, as they could never get Tone and Seda's name quite right. This is also prevalent in Dark Cloud's trading cards, which had errors with the character names as well. It all paints the image that Sony's approach to multimedia at that time was to advertise as soon as possible, but through doing so, this led to several name and lore issues in the advertising cycle. Now, what this tells me is that these figures were being made as early as possible, while Dark Cloud is being developed in Japan and localized by Sony International. All of this evidence comes together to show us that the toy deal for Dark Cloud between PlayStation and BlueBox was signed as early as possible in the game's development, before things like names were finalized and localized. Now, there's a good reason for this, as this tactic is typically done for merchandise deals. To sign as early as possible means that the toy companies have enough time to develop, design, manufacture, and release these toys to coincide with the game's release, which is funny in a cosmic and ironic sort of way, considering that these figures sold so poorly that they were forgotten and became lost media. And the Dark Cloud beta rabbit hole goes even deeper, as BlueBox Toys didn't only use the beta logo on the box, but they also used the beta logo on the stand for the figures, in addition to using the beta 3D render of the cover art for their advertising. BlueBox used the beta logo not only on the figure mount, but also on the box arts, and to seal the deal, they even used a beta version of the 3D render of the cover arts. Another bizarre aspect of Dark Cloud's lost media action figures is this interesting number seen on the advertisement and box arts. It appears to be a code used by BlueBox to keep track of their releases. And it begs the question, did BlueBox have an internal database for keeping track of release numbers and the figures that they would have shipped to retail? Are these numbers something more, and do they hold a key part in this mystery? However, the codes were never truly consistent, as on the BlueBox release number on the advertisement, the number doesn't match with the one provided on the sale page at EB Games Online. They could never get it quite right. After BlueBox rebranded their company to a child-friendly version, what did they do to that database? I mention this because BlueBox Toys did indeed keep a physical vault of all of their products, which can be seen in these photos. In addition to the founder, Mr. Peter Chan-Pui, had BlueBox responded to the emails sent out by Kai, they could have possibly dug into their vault and provided us with photos of Dark Cloud's figures, their packaging, and maybe even the fabled second wave of figures that was never released. Can all of BlueBox's products still be found in the archive? Did they dispose of the product when Mr. Peter Chan-Pui tragically died in 2013, which led to the changing of the guard and the shift of focus in the company? One could only imagine. And our journey with these rare Dark Cloud lost media figures began at none other than Jump Fest in Japan, a foreign event with little to no documentation outside of Nippon. But what if I told you that this was not the only event that these Dark Cloud figures appeared at, as hidden away in Tomart's Action Figure Digest, an action figure magazine which frequently covered New York Toy Fair, we can see that these figures made their American debut. It's truly heartwarming knowing that these figures were shown off in Japan, in addition to North America. But as far as we know, they were never for sale in Japan and just barely provided in America. Maybe storefronts like Walmart, Toys R Us, and KB Toys refused to carry them due to the lack of sales of other BlueBox toys. Maybe that's why they were sold online. Before we begin our analysis on this chapter in the tale of Dark Cloud's lost media action figures, we should touch on what exactly are the fabled prototype figures, the development between the prototype and final action figures. Over the course of production, big and tiny alterations are made when creating these figures. You may be wondering, why talk about the prototypes? The tale of these prototypes is crucial as they potentially hold the key to an answer to why they are sold online rather than traditional retail. It goes without saying, BlueBox Toys did go to the toy fair in an attempt to gauge interest in their new Dark Cloud products. If these retailers were interested in these figures at the show, then they'd make the space at their establishments for these figures. figures. It was very common for toy companies like BlueBox to bring along their prototypes, anything resembling the complete product, which brings us to these prototype figures having the spotlights at New York Toy Fair 2001. Now, Castle Maniacs, the saying goes, everything is clear in hindsight. And sadly, with how these figures were sold online only, never being seen in store, it's safe to think that BlueBox was unable to obtain a deal with the retailer. If they did, we would have seen them in person. Rather, selling these action figures online was a result of not securing a deal with retailers. The only image that we have of this complete figure set was obtained at the New York Toy Fair 2001. Now, take my hand and don't let go, or else you may end up being lost media too, to fade into obscurity and drifting away, forgotten. The Dark Cloud Compendium has been here for 5 years, through good times and bad, but dedicated all the same. If you're still here watching, I wanted to express my gratitude. We're both just as dedicated, we're both a little bit crazy, aren't we? And we'll both save Dark Cloud's lost media together. Now, that's enough sentiment. There's even more Dark Cloud figure history to cover, so gather around as we analyze Dark Cloud's prototype figures, every detail. The beta prototype of Tone was indeed different, as the arms were in a different position, whereas the finished figure had his arms in front of his chest. Now, what good is a hero without a dastardly villain? The Dark Genie's prototype figure remained unpainted and featured 3 brightly colored pieces of clay. Likely would have been later replaced for transparent glass as it used for both Tone and Sada's finished figures. It's clear that BBI didn't sculpt out the elaborate markings on the Dark Genie's gut as of yet within this prototype figure. And one can't mention the Dark Genie without Sada. The differences in the beta prototype figure of Sada matches Tone, as Sada's arms were also in a different position. The final figure has Sada wielding his blade with 2 hands. The prototype figure of Ruby features a different arm placement. I feel like the creator of these figures was trying to replicate this pose from Ruby in her concept arts. And here comes Hiddencastle's favorites. The prototype figure of Master Jacket also features a different arm placement, with one up and the other down, compared to the final figure, where both arms are neutral. Now with these statues, the way the arms go in, it's at a hexagon peg, they're unable to move. The fine details like the cracks all over its skull were not painted quite yet. And as for Minotaur Joe, we'll never truly know, as this is the only time we've seen his figure. With that being said, the deep dive look at these rare prototype figures is done and dusted. We learned all that we could regarding these prototypes 2 long decades later. Let's take a closer look at the Dark Cloud figures we obtained after all these years. After more than 20 years, this lost chapter of Dark Cloud's history has finally reached the hands of the lost media preservation community and the Dark Cloud Compendium. This is the first time that these figures were ever seen on video, so gather around, let's take a closer look at what's been eluding us for all those years. Dark Cloud's figures of Tone and Sada, lost media no more. Many moons have passed waiting for these figures to arrive, and when it was finally time to release our Dark Cloud heroes from their cardboard Atla prisms, one thing took me by surprise as I was unwrapping them, and that was the small details and the style of paint that BlueBox Toys used when creating these statues. They just looked so vibrant and full of detail and color. The build quality is hefty and heavy as they're made of resin. A quick scan around both figures reveal that there is no company copyright text that's usually common in other action figures and statues. Had Dark Cloud's figures had this from the beginning, it would have made them so much easier to find out who created them, but for some reason, it was omitted. Tone's figure has long hair and his poncho flowing, and speaking of his poncho, it looks phenomenal as there's subtle small details such as the shadows around the fabric folds, and the individual sculpting of each strand of hair and the poncho stitching. It looks really impressive for a statue from the early 2000s, as other figures from that era would have lazily painted on these subtle features, but rather BlueBox opted for a two-pronged approach to sculpt the finer details and paint on top of them. You can tell that there is care given to this Dark Cloud product, unlike the online advertising. Tone features a really odd expression, but I have to admit, it did grow on me over time. It resembles European animation like Wakfu. It feels really cool seeing another company officially reinterpret Tone since we got so very little Dark Cloud official representation in multimedia. His arms were lost to the sands of time. However, through using BlueBox Toys' advertisement as our primary source, we can get a clearer look at what Tone would have looked like had he been complete, as he would have been wielding this amazing looking sun sword, which is fascinating as Tone is always depicted in official art as wielding the dagger. Moreover, his other hand featured a light green glass gem of an Atlamelia, which is really impressive. Again, BlueBox Toys didn't paint on any features, and in the Atlamelia's case, glued on a glass gem, giving a premium look. Now the facial expression, the sun sword, and this pose does beg the question, did Level 5 and Sony send BlueBox Toys key art of their Dark Cloud characters and design guidelines for BlueBox to adhere to? Was a sculptor given free rein to reinterpret these iconic characters? Now I mention this as we've never seen a 3D render or official art of Tone resembling this pose, or wielding the sun sword, but the few photos that we have of Ruby's statue looks fairly accurate to the official art, as they're both posed in a similar way, as Ruby's figure follows this official pose in Dark Cloud's art. Overall, I think BlueBox Toys did a really good job with Tone in this figure. With that being said, I would have much rather had his facial expression resemble how he appears in the final version of the game, but I also appreciate this different look. Hey, it's not every day we see our favorite Diorama protagonist reinterpreted through official media. Now let's move on to Seda, and the first thing that stuck out to me with this figure was his hair, as BlueBox Toys painted it this iridescent silver as he's caught in this chaotic battle pose. The sculpting is expressive and full of purpose, and I really do like the color they used on both of these figures, as they both have this washed out watercolor aesthetic, almost as if both figures leaped out of a page of concept art. You can see that they sculpted each individual strand, giving it this really cool look. Referring back to BlueBox Toys advertisements, we can see that Seda would have featured his familiar greatsword. Unfortunately, the figure we got lost his blade ages ago. The quality only continues as care was also put into the creation of the figure mount, which is also made of a durable resin. Putting this mount towards the light allows it to illuminate and bask in the glow, giving it this radiant appearance. The added glitter applied also really does bring out that otherworldly feeling. Each curve of the dark clouds is sculpted into the resin rather than lazily being painted on, giving it a rather dynamic 3D look, which feels great to touch. It makes every detail pop out. Now, there's more to this mount than meets the eye, as keen Dark Cloud fans would have noticed that this logo is familiar, as it's based on the original logo for Dark Cloud. Dark Cloud's logo did go through a number of changes throughout development, as it originally appeared much more cartoonish looking, as it featured purple clouds emerging from the dark urn. When Dark Cloud later reappeared at Tokyo Game Show 2000, the logo evolved into this much more fantasy-inspired design, removing that charming urn altogether. Now this logo was only used briefly, as it once again evolved into its final form that we're all familiar with. It all makes me think, why would BlueBox use the original 1999 logo of Dark Cloud for a product that was releasing well into 2001 with a new logo altogether, when Dark Cloud saw a number of revisions, making that logo on the mounts out of date? It really does make me think that maybe BlueBox Toys just liked the look of the previous logo. Again, there's no copyright names or dates engraved onto the mounts, which is very odd indeed, as it's typical practice for companies to put their copyright text anywhere on the figure, but here they are, Dark Cloud's figures and mounts with no copyright holders to be found. It's a tragedy that these figures fell into the bargain bin, and even more so that they're quickly forgotten into lost media by the same community that was meant to embrace them, as you can tell that BlueBox Toys put a lot of love and effort into their creation, and it's a shame that we never got a good look at the rest of the figures. I personally would have loved to see the approach they would have taken with Ruby's more complex Harabi design and the shading technique they would have used for the rickety bones of the master jackets. Simply put, these figures did not deserve to be lost media. I really wish that all parties involved, Level 5, PlayStation, and BlueBox Toys, would have allowed these figures to have a wider release, because I really do think the fans would have taken a liking to them and would have went out of their way to collect them all. Throughout our action figure deep dive and on our Dark Cloud Iceberg journey, one thing can never be understated, and that is the passion of the Dark Cloud community. Even after 20 years, a lifetime, the creativity of our community is clear in all forms of art, from musical remixes to other work that draws inspiration from Dark Cloud, to people even creating their own Dark Cloud fan-made figures. The Dark Cloud community took the role of toy creators and made fan-made figures after all. Let's take a brief look at a number of community creations made by our very own. To begin, I want to highlight the wonderful Manda Marvelous Mysteries, who made tiny figures full of personality of all our JRPG favorites, from Grandia to Rogue Galaxy, Dark Chronicle, and even Dark Cloud. A great touch and attention to detail can be seen in how each figure platform is part of the character history, from Norun Village under Tone, Palm Brinks under Monica, and Planet Rosa under Jaster. Little features like this make it all the more charming. I would love to have a few of these in the Compendium office. Moving away from the world of figures, do you remember that modular diorama set of Norun Village showed off at the beginning of this iceberg? Well, the talented Lich Laboratory took the time to create this Norun Village diorama kit. It's complete with villager houses, mountains, bodies of water, and more. The technique is truly impressive. They even used cat litter to pave the road of Norun. Now, the world of fan figures and dioramas wouldn't be complete without fan-made prop blades. The world of technology has evolved to allow normal people like you and I to do the unthinkable, to create Dark Cloud prop weapons, the dream of every Dark Cloud fan from all around the world. Rowdy Matt 51 had the brilliant idea to use a 3D printer to create their own prop blades from Dark Cloud and Dark Chronicle in the real world. As technology progresses, we find comforts in the ways of old, the time-honored art form of paper folding and Dark Cloud together again. Del Talal created this amazing Dark Cloud papercraft of an Atlamelia. It looks like the real thing. It even has this very interesting polygon look like a PS2 model. And finally, bringing it all back to the world of fan-made figures. Dark Cloud community member and musical master, Super Kami Guru, commissioned an amazing figure of our #1 genie, Ruby. When I first saw this fan-made figure around April of 2024, what caught my Hiddencastle eye was the overall unique art style. When comparing this fan-made figure with the real one by BBI, you can see that both were carefully crafted with love, full of quality and detail. The wonderful fan-made figures by Kamiguru and Manda opened the door to the idea of creating custom figures of the whole Dark Cloud crew. Maybe one day. From tiny creations to tiny villages, Atlamelias, and high-tech 3D weaponry, to fan-made figures once again, the Dark Cloud community thinks creatively, and being around that creative energy is motivating. Our uniquely multi-talented members of the community, each one bringing their own interpretation to Dark Cloud figures. After that deep dive and our in-depth look at these figures, you can tell that they were made with a lot of love. How did we never hear about BBI before these Dark Cloud figures? And why did a juggernaut like Sony want to deal with a tiny company like BBI when they could have went to other bigger companies like Nintendo did with Toy Biz? Well, there's a reason for that. Why was BBI chosen to create figures for Dark Cloud, a new IP that was planned to be the next big hit in the world of video games? You would think that they want to give this figure deal to a company that had bigger name value, but with BBI, it felt like the perfect match. And the reason for that can be found in how the company operated. BBI was founded in 1952 by Mr. Peter Chan Pui, who acted as the company's honorable chairman until his passing. The first item that BBI created was a drinking and pissing doll which made a shit ton of money. And as BBI grew, they created more factories in Hong Kong. They transferred their operation to China to keep costs low. It was that cost-cutting maneuver which impressed companies from all around the world. As BBI handled their own R&D as well, they were capable of creating their own figure molds, cutting out the middleman, all while keeping costs low. And like that, for companies that wanted to make toys out of their TV shows, comics, and other fun properties, BBI felt like a safe bet. BBI knew that the market would gradually shift into technology due to the popularity of arcades and video games at home, but they knew deep down that there will always be a demand for regular toys. With that hatched the idea, why not create toys based on popular video games to gain customers and the support of IP holders? And you know what? It worked. BBI kept it low-key, only hiring about 150 employees around the year 2000, but they made a name for themselves, a reputation for being the people to go to if you wanted to make cheap figures for your IPs for a low manufacturing price. Make all the money with little investment. Little by little, as time went on and the money kept coming in, they were able to expand abroad to UK and America too. They later began developing their own line of figures known as Elite Force. They were unique and detailed 12-inch military figures and vehicles with a revolutionary attention to detail only available from BBI. In a crowded world of manufacturing giants like Mattel and LJN, BBI found a middle ground that was lucrative for everyone involved, and they made amazing figures packed with detail. It was when they opened up their branch in America that they began gaining deals for video games, Legacy of Kain, Fighting Force, and Legend of Dragoon, to name a few. The value that came with having the interplay between their toys and ideas based off of video games for popularity. For BBI, it was a way to enter a new market, and for Sony, BBI were the creators who offered the lowest price of investment, low risk, and lots of reward. And for that, they were the best fit to create figures for Dark Cloud due to their low price of entry. I gotta say, Castlemaniacs, toys and dolls are a simple pleasure in childhood, one that not all of us were able to enjoy, but what little we had, they were treasures. Toys gave us the power to create our own adventures with our favorite heroes, and through that play came creativity, life lessons, and hope. It would be easy to end the deep dive without touching on BBI and the impact they made in the world of figures, as often as they are forgotten. Not today. Not on Hiddencastle's watch. Toy companies like BBI gave us an opportunity to enter a world of imagination and create our own adventures, all as children. That cannot be understated. Maybe, with the dawn of technology, the youth of today will never understand, never value the play that comes with figures. Are the youth of tomorrow gonna value the experience that comes with playing with friends and family, with pissing dolls and action figures? I don't know. Are these warm moments gonna fade away, forever replaced with the cold comfort of iPads and technology? It's time to let go. Good luck in the afterlife, Mr. Peter Chan Pui. Whether this be a postmortem or a review on the legacy of BBI, I wanted to give BBI their flowers. Thank you, Mr. Peter Chan Pui, and thank you, BBI. Your work is forever preserved and saved in the Dark Cloud Compendium. Your work will never be forgotten.
So what do you think? It's going to vanish? It's not going to be there when I get back?
Before we complete our deep dive documentary on this lost media secrets, the lost figures of Dark Cloud, I want to take a look back and tell where each company is today. Where are they now? PlayStation worked with Level 5 on Dark Cloud, Dark Chronicle, and later Rogue Galaxy. All were only available on their console alone, not found on any competitors. They later collaborated together to work on White Knight Chronicle, a game that had Diorama as well, only to garner mixed reviews. Like Dark Cloud, White Knight was created by Akihiro Hino, who handled directing, producing Dark Cloud and White Knight. They even hid a cameo from Osmond for good measure. What more could you ask for? White Knight was the final time that Hino was a director under Sony. However, after all the games that Level 5 developed for Sony, none was given the proper multimedia push, like the first Dark Cloud. After the JRPG boom, after Final Fantasy, Sony genuinely wanted their own RPG hit with Dark Cloud, an IP they owned while Level 5 handled the development and creative. We often forget, but Dark Cloud came with a multimedia ad campaign containing TV commercials, aggressive magazine headlines and art heralding it as the Zelda killer, trading cards, an online flash game, giant statues at conventions, and even the topic of this very documentary, a figure line for Dark Cloud to mark its greatness for time immemorial. It's a tragedy due to how these figures became forgotten. Unfortunately, after the collaboration with Level 5 on White Knight, Sony opted to not even release White Knight 2 in America. It was a move that was done in bad faith. What they couldn't take away is the passion of the community. Even today, the Dark Cloud community is alive, keeping the adventure going for generations to come and making new adventures along the way by finding lost media. Dark Cloud would later be re-released on modern consoles, making our Diorama duology accessible for newer fans, and Dark Cloud would find cameos in Everybody's Golf in 2018, and later on in Astro's Playroom in 2024 with Rogue Galaxy and Dark Chronicle. Many clamor for Dark Cloud 3. Many remain hopeful. Maybe one day we'll get our wish. Until then, it may happen. Definitely. Maybe. But what of Level 5? After collaborating with PlayStation, Level 5 wanted to create tiny adventures on the DS like Professor Layton and Inazuma 11. Little did they know that their new IP would explode in popularity, giving Level 5 a mega hit series that they had control over, unlike Dark Cloud. They later created the mega hit Yokai Watch. For a while, it was not uncommon to walk into a toy store and find toys of Inazuma 11, Professor Layton, and Yokai Watch. All over North America and Europe, Yokai Watch was a multimedia powerhouse that Level 5 and Sony always wanted from Dark Cloud. The only difference was that Level 5 did it themselves. It was clear that Level 5 captured the minds and imagination of a new generation, only at a much broader scale than Dark Cloud. They would not have to rely on publishers like Sony, who held their older IP, Dark Cloud, hostage, or Microsoft, who would unfairly cancel their projects prior to release. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, as Yokai Watch Mania had faded away, as Level 5 had to make the difficult call to close their international office, which helped localize their own games for international markets. From then, Level 5 grabbed that Dran's feather and ran to the finish line. They're back on their feet, busy creating their own IPs. In 2024 alone, they have a new Inazuma 11, Professor Layton, and Fantasy Life game coming out. Level 5 is leading the charge of Japanese greatness in gaming. And finally, what happened to BlueBox? After the release of Dark Cloud figures in the summer of 2001, BlueBox would later acquire the right to create toys for Final Fantasy, King of Fighters, and many more. After the death of BlueBox founder in November 15, 2013, the company went on a new direction, leaving the beautifully detailed world of video game figures behind to pivot to toddler toys. Notably, at one point in time, they had total right to create toys for Bluey and Peppa Pig. Even then, the question remains, what became of BBI's archive? What became of the figures that were never released, like Ruby, Dark Genie, and Minotaur Joe? We will never know. There's no denying that there was a large demand in customers wanting to own figures of their favorite video game characters, and this only increased in the 2000s as the advancements in both video game visuals meant that character designs could become more complicated, and this also paralleled the advancements in sculpting technology, as the 2000s saw companies like McFarlane Toys and NECA redefine what it means to create a quality action figure at an affordable price. Flash forward 20 years and PlayStation partnered with ThinkGeek as a response to Nintendo's lucrative Amiibo figures, and PlayStation released their own line of collectible figures called Totaku, everyone from Parappa the Rapper to the Good Hunter of Bloodborne. The only level 5 representation we got in Totaku was Evan from Ni no Kuni 2, level 5's most recent release at the time, and they didn't bother to delve back into their catalog of classic level 5 PlayStation characters from Dark Cloud, Dark Cloud 2, or Rogue Galaxy before PlayStation abandoned the toy line, and this all leads to a beautifully bizarre butterfly effect. A thought experiment, if you will. Imagine if these Dark Cloud figures would have been successful in the early 2000s. Would we have gotten figures for Dark Cloud 2 or Rogue Galaxy? Now, there are still companies out there like First 4 Figures who made a name for themselves creating premium figures of lesser known 2000s RPGs like The Legacy of Kain and Eternal Arcadia. Maybe with enough demand we can get other companies open to the idea of creating Dark Cloud figures. There is a demand here. Dark Cloud's figures are an interesting page in Dark Cloud's Forgotten Chronicle, and my personal introduction to the amazing world of lost media. Preserving these figures through the Dark Cloud Compendium feels gratifying, but it just could not have been done without the help of Story Lover, Kai, and the rest of the Dark Cloud community. It all begs the question, where did the rest of these figures go? And when will they be found? Lost media, an unwritten record with many questions. As the tides of life wash away our footprints in the sand, lost media and the history of video games is no different. But our community's hunt to preserve Dark Cloud's lost media is the true, never-ending adventure. My name's Hiddencastle, and if you enjoyed this lost media video, feel free to check out our other Dark Cloud videos. Take care and have a great day. Hey there! I hope you enjoyed our documentary on Dark Cloud's lost figurines. It was one that I had a lot of fun putting together, and I wanted to talk a little bit, just a tiny bit, about the behind the scenes, because this video organically grew and mutated, if you will, as the years went on, and that's it, years! I'll tell you what, this first started back in October of 2023, and I wrote a 2-page script, and it was something where it was supposed to be a light video about maybe 15 minutes, but the more I started to fall in the rabbit hole that was BlueBox, that was BBI, that is Dark Cloud, it just grew and grew. So I had to ask myself, is it best to just put out a video that's 15 minutes, or why not dig out our soul and put everything out there and make it the most complete, comprehensive video on a very forgotten company from a forgotten game series? And that's what breaks my heart the most, is that Dark Cloud, I think, is the most wonderful thing in the world, and these statues really are quite nice. So as time progressed, it went from 15 minutes, I'm like, okay, we could push it to about 20. And then from 20, I said, okay, we could do about 30, make it a half-hour special. Now by then, 2 months have passed without a video, and I always say the beautiful people, the viewers, are the ones that you're trying to do your best for. So I'm like, well, it's been 2 months. I can't give them a video that's 30 minutes in good conscience and make them wait 2 months for it. 3 months rolled around, it was a 45-minute long video. I said, you know what, make it an hour, 1 hour, give it the iceberg treatment. As of now, this is the longest video on the channel of just straight Dark Cloud Compendium goodness, you know, voiceover all throughout, aside from the Icebergs. So that, it does feel quite nice for me, professionally, because this is what I do, and I love doing it. It's how we find our worth in the world, right? And I think lost media is a very important topic, one that should not be disregarded or infantilized. It's something that's part of our culture, and when our culture is lost, that terrifying feeling of the familiar being missing, it really makes you think of our imprints in the world. There were real people that made these statues. There were real people that sat down and sculpted them and created them, and we have no idea who they are, where they are, you know, what happened to the rest of these lovely statues between Ruby and the Dark Genie and Minotaur Joe. But I wanted to make sure that this video was the most complete video on Dark Cloud statues. And it's funny because it took us through a rabbit hole talking about almost all aspects of Dark Cloud, Tokyo Game Show, Jump Fest, these obscure festivals that were not even here in the States. They're over down yonder in the land of the rising sun, in Nippon, in Japan, if you will. And just researching, like, I was able to live in the early 2000s for about 8 months, from 2023 October to October of 2024. It's bizarre, it really is. And it's a lovely feeling, and it's one that I never take for granted. And as we go along, I think that maybe this video will have to be updated once upon a time, maybe in the future, if these statues do get found, the rest of them. I'll gladly make an extension, maybe a director's cut, who knows. But I want to thank all my amazing patrons for being very patient with me and being with me every step of the process. I want to thank the lovely viewers. It's you all, honestly. I make these videos, whether they're 1 minute long or 1 hour long, and I only expect them to get 2 views, one from me and one from my mom, from Mama Castle. So the fact that it gets anything more than 2 is humbling. And it's never about the eyeballs, it's about the feeling. It's about that feeling of discovery, of the never-ending treasure hunt that is Dark Cloud and Lost Media as a whole. So with that being said, I want to thank you all from the bottom of my Hiddencastle hearts. I hope that one day the rest of these statues could be found, but until then, we have what we have, and we're thankful for it. It was a long search, over 20 years, over 2 decades. That's longer than some of you have been alive, really. But it's a search that was well worth taking. That journey was truly special, and I thank you all for being a part of it. Now, I'll see you in the next video, maybe a new Dark Cloud Iceberg. And here we are in our rainy valley to finish our final few shots for the Dark Cloud action figure documentary. One of my favorite parts about the Dark Cloud Compendium is coming together with Mother Nature to film some of these wonderful, special, magical shots. I think it really does elevate the compendium, and it gives it a really nice, unique look. One of the core themes of Dark Cloud is nature, and I love Mother Nature as well. It's very important to note that our friend is bubble wrapped for his protection, to make sure that he doesn't get any injuries on our journey throughout this valley. It may be a little shaky, but we're doing it with one hand. We have our copies of Dark Cloud, along with these Ultra Pro trading card holders, enough to hold a DVD. And here goes our special friend. There we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to make these gradually fade away. So through doing this, we're going to be just filming with the tripod, and then removing one, and then enabling a fade effect on that, so it looks like it fades. Removing the other, and then doing the same, and then... This is real TV, folks. Wouldn't it be funny if one of them falls in the water? That would be a nice little artifact for some scuba diver later on. But that's okay. So as you can see, the tripod is a little too high for where we want it. I don't think the shot with the river is going to work. If we had a smaller tripod, maybe. But there is this very cool looking mountain crag down this way that maybe we could do something with, and it'd be high enough to get the shot that we want to do. So let's not waste any time. Now these waterfalls look really cool. I want to try to get a shot of Dark Cloud 1 and 2 fading away into the distance within these waterfalls. It's too good to pass up, really. Let's give it a shot and see how it is. Nothing got lost away in the waves. Lost media saved once again. Thanks to the Dark Cloud community. And as you can see on the bottom left, over 317 transitions, 317 sequence shifts, and over 1 hour of footage. We're not even done yet. We still have the fan creations to add in there. But here it is, a 1 hour work print of the documentary rendering. Now, it's going to be going through 2 separate passes. The first pass is nice and quick. The second pass is the one that takes more time. It'll take about maybe an hour and 20 minutes, maybe 45 minutes to render. But because there's so many different sequence shifts and transitions throughout the video, and I wish I could scroll through right now and show it all, but it's rendering. I really do enjoy using Microsoft Movie Maker. Why? The reason being it's the most primitive program, and I think being able to showcase your skill through using the most primitive program really shows the excellence of your skill set, and that's what I enjoy the most of it, is the fact that it doesn't matter if you give somebody ketchup and chopsticks, they'll still be able to make a nice painting if they're talented at it. And I think after 5 years of doing this work and doing video production, we've gotten quite good at it, and we've learned how to work Movie Maker like a wizard. Also, it gives videos this very unique look, this very almost a grainy 2010s aesthetic, and I absolutely adore that. I always make the videos and ask myself, like, what would I want to watch growing up? Almost like letters to the past, very similar to Max at the end of Dark Chronicle. I'd like to send these videos to myself when I was younger, when none of this was known. We had these questions, but none of the answers or solutions. The best thing is, we found them together. This is all for you because you're all amazing, and we're all amazing together, the best team. I hope you enjoy this little segment talking about the making of this documentary. Almost a year out of my life through different various illnesses, but with the lungs being an issue always. As soon as we recovered, I said, okay, we need to make something special. The last video rather that we worked on while we were still relatively healthy was the Flash video. And if you ever watch the Flash video, notice like something about it is off, or it sounds off, or it looks off. It's because I wasn't feeling very well, but I didn't want to take that month off. I took that month off. That meant that you all would have one less video to watch, and I wouldn't want to do that, especially when a lot of these videos are they're finite. There's not an infinite number of them. So when I started to feel like my lungs weren't able to perform at the level that I was comfortable with, because I was not able to breathe easy, and I was just in a lot of pain with breathing and with doing voiceover I'm in the booth for about maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes per video, whether it's a 5-minute long video or a 10-minute long video. I want to make it sound just right, so it takes a lot out of it that I had to take a bit of a break. But when I came back, I said, okay, one video I always wanted to work on was the video that you're seeing today, the lost figures of Dark Cloud, and all of the pieces came together. We were able to get, through the help of Story Lover and other amazing patrons, we're able to get these lost artifacts in our hands, and that's when the time was right. That's when we had to make this video. We just had to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And through everybody coming together with their passion, I wanted to make it 1 hour long because I think we deserve that. Honestly, probably one of the last 1 hour long videos I'll ever do. I don't know how much longer I have these 1 hour long videos left in me. We're probably going to scale back to doing 10-minute, 5-minute, 15 to 20 at the longest, but I really do enjoy these longer videos, though, the 1 hour long productions, because you're able to sit down and just really get into the topic, if the topic allows it, right? But with a lost history of these statues, as you can see, we're only 9% in the second pass. But with these lost statues, I feel like there's so much history between Level 5, Sony, BlueBox, Tokyo Game Show, Jump Fest, and just going back through the Wayback Machine, the lost beta figures and where the figures ended up, the quality, why were they not stamped, the ongoing mysteries. It's too much, it really is, but I think we probably could have went on for another hour. There is some things that I wanted to talk about that something had to come, like something had to give. We had to say, okay, you know what, this is good, enough's enough, because we're going to be working on it forever. And other videos would fade away because of that. Other videos would not get released because of that. I really want to do Dark Cloud Iceberg 4. I also think I should probably keep that close to the chest, but I want to speak it out there. Iceberg 4 is something that is going to be fun, because I feel like that's one of probably the last Iceberg I do, just because again, it takes a lot out of me, and I really want to focus on just making sure that I'm healthy, and while still being able to put these videos out there. It shouldn't be one or the other. At one point it was, but I want to make sure that we're all good. And here we are, 12%. I've rambled on long enough, and I just want to say thank you for checking out the video. Thank you for sticking with me. You're all very, very special, and I hope you enjoyed. Hope it was worth the wait. Take care and be well. See you later, alligator.
This video is made possible by amazing viewers like you and contributions from our generous patrons. Thank you.
The World of the Compendium is a Patreon-supported show. These deep dive videos would not be possible if not for the support of all my generous patrons. I'm forever grateful. Patrons are able to get a behind-the-scenes look with how these videos are created and get to help support the channel. With that being said, many thanks to my viewers and patrons, both new and old alike, for all the support. It's our combined passion for obscure RPGs that keeps this show going strong. The link to the Patreon can be found in the description below. Many thanks to my Compendium Chroniclers: Jamie Jackson, Sundial Shark, GD Break, Waposa, Anna, Story Lover, Ryan 7, Weeb Warrior. Many thanks to our Moon Sea Mega Supporters who have a message to the community. Moon Sea Mega Supporter GD Break says, the two best ways to judge a person's character are 1. How much they love Dark Cloud, and 2. Their dedication and support for Hiddencastle's Dark Cloud Compendium. What? You're not subscribed yet? What are you waiting for? That's so cool of you, GD Break. Thank you.